On Point is brought to you by Darjan Global.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of On Point. I'm your host Dennis Chung, flying solo today as Patria is unavoidably absent. She'll be back next week. Before we get into introducing what we're going to discuss today, there are three things that are on my mind about the past week. First is the death of Kobe Bryant, which is a very sad occasion for the whole globe. I grew up watching Kobe play basketball and we're all very sorry about what happened. Secondly, the matter of the coronavirus, which I think is a significant problem for us, not just from the point of view of health and the fact that this thing seems to be taking about 20 lives per day and growing exponentially across the globe. But what it means for us is that it could affect global growth significantly. And that is something I don't think we've started to quantify yet, because if we start affecting travel, we're talking about expenditure. The tourist industry worldwide already has lost billions of dollars, and that can certainly impact small island states like Jamaica. Already the global economy was projected to face a slowdown this year, and so we'll have to continue to watch that and hope that on the local front, our government responds quickly to dealing with this virus, because one of the issues that has come to my mind that could cause us some problems and we need to look at is our procurement process. Because if we need to procure things to prevent and contain the virus, we have to make sure that we don't go through the current process that exists. So that's a big issue for me. The final thing I'd like to comment on is a 7.7 magnitude earthquake that occurred earlier this week. It certainly is frightening, but what it also is saying to us that as a country we need to get prepared, because hearing some of the stories, I don't think many people were prepared for it. As we look forward to the show, business confidence was down for another quarter at the end of 2019. We'll tell you why as we discuss the findings of the latest Jamaica Chamber of Commerce's Business and Consumer Confidence Survey. And later on, Jamaica slipped a few places in the Global Corruption Perception Index. What does this mean? We'll have more for you on that. But first, let's take a look back at some of the top business stories of the week.
At number 5, it's official. Brexit will happen on Friday, January 31, 2020. The European Parliament has overwhelmingly approved the departure of the United Kingdom from the European Union. The withdrawal agreement was ratified by 621 votes to 49, sealing the UK's official exit from the bloc. After the vote, lawmakers pointed out that there are several lessons to be learned from Brexit that should shape the future of the European Union. At number 4, Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison has used his first speech of the year to defend his country's coal industry. He says he is protecting jobs, but critics say coal and climate change have contributed to the unprecedented bushfires continuing to burn. At number 3, the fallout from the novel coronavirus intensified this week. Airlines in the US have cancelled flights in and out of China, while more countries across the globe are strengthening surveillance mechanisms and enforcing travel restrictions. Jamaica is among the countries tightening restrictions, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade agreeing with the Health and Wellness Ministry to discourage traveling between Jamaica and China. Meanwhile, the Foreign Affairs Ministry says it continues to closely monitor the welfare of the Jamaican community in China regarding the spread of the coronavirus across that country. At number 2, the Office of Utilities Regulation OUR has now accepted the Jamaica Public Service Company Limited's 2019 to 2024 tariff application that was resubmitted on December 30, 2019. According to JPS, if the tariff application is approved, customers would see an average increase in overall rates of 4.69% subject to annual reviews. The average impact will vary by customer class as well as within customer class, depending on consumption and choice of tariff. JPS says based on its proposal, residential customers would see the largest increase of 17.14%, while large industrial commercial customers on the time of use option would register a reduction of 14.06%. At number 1 this week, Fitch Ratings Agency has affirmed the government of Jamaica's long-term foreign currency issuer and local currency issuer default rating at B+. The ratings agency also upgraded the country's outlook to positive from stable. Fitch indicated that the revised outlook reflected Jamaica's efforts in maintaining the downward trajectory of the debt-to-GDP ratio, supported by the government's successes in running large primary surpluses. The ratings agency also recognized as positives the efforts to ensure policy continuity in a post-IMF environment, with the commitment to establish a fiscal council and the signing of a memorandum of understanding with the Economic Program Oversight Committee, EPOC. In further explaining the affirmation of the B+ ratings, Fitch pointed out that the high debt to GDP and low growth levels were constraining factors. However, prospects for growth have improved and it is expected that growth will move steadily to 1.5% by 2021.
When we come back, we're talking business and consumer confidence. Stay with us right here on Point. Welcome back to On Point. JCC's latest survey shows business confidence waning for another quarter. However, consumer confidence has been consistently stable. Here's a look at that report.
Business confidence dropped for the fourth quarter of 2019, making it 3 consecutive quarters of reduced confidence amongst local businesses. The quarter's index fell by 10 points from 141 points in the previous quarter to 131. The fall in confidence is being attributed to the fluctuating dollar, which saw the Bank of Jamaica intervening in the market a number of times during the period. Crime and violence were also deemed as strong influences for the dip in the index. On the contrary, consumer confidence has remained stable for the past few quarters. The index for the fourth quarter of 2019 was 180 points. This has been influenced by consumers' perception of business conditions, jobs, along with their expectations of earning during the quarter.
And joining us now to talk about these results is pollster and head of Market Research Limited, Don Anderson, and president of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, Keith Duncan. Welcome to On Point, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Don, what's the latest? You are the man with the numbers.
Yeah, well, you've in a way captured everything in a nutshell, because business confidence slipped again in the fourth quarter of 2019, and that was a continuation of a decline that set in quarter 2. So quarter 2 it fell, in quarter 3 it fell, and it accelerated in quarter 4, and therefore
the fall accelerated.
The fall accelerated in 4. So we've seen a virtually precipitous decline from 151 to 131 by fourth quarter 2019. On the other hand, consumer confidence has, it was the same as it was in quarter 3. So we don't want to say it maintained its level. That's about all we can say. We have to watch the fourth quarter, or the first quarter in 2020 for us to see whether this is a halt and the beginning of a process of decline, as we saw in the business sector.
What are some of the main reasons for
let's look at the business sector first of all. They're highlighting 2 main factors. One is the fact that the dollar, vis-a-vis the US dollar, has been fluctuating too widely for them, too quickly, so that it's not a question of the devaluation so much, but the fluctuation is the erratic, what they consider to be an erratic movement of the dollar, which is making long-term planning very difficult, right? That's the principal item. Coupled with that, they were very concerned about the high level of crime and violence in society, which is beginning to really, it has never been far from their minds. It's beginning to really seriously weigh in the psyche of the business persons who are now believing that, let me stop and think. nobody's about to stop investing. But the fact of the matter is that there are fewer businesses who are now feeling that it is a good time to invest.
Keith, what is your view on it? You're a prominent business person.
Right.
I mean, the dollar fluctuation, the crime and violence, are there any other reasons?
Well, I mean, I guess, I mean, you know, Jamaica and Jamaican businessmen and Jamaican people on a whole have had a fixation on the exchange rate and the value of the Jamaican dollar vis-a-vis the US dollar. Always been there. And even though, as Don just pointed out, even though the year-over-year depreciation of the currency is probably 3%, but the swings and the high level of volatility causes anxious moments because people don't know where is this going, how can I plan, where will the dollar be 1 year from now, 6 months from now, 3 months from now, how will this disrupt my payment cycle? It's a challenge.
So it's a real concern.
It's a real concern. But on the other side of the equation, we have our reserves are at gross reserves, which are at 3.6 billion. International reserves at 3.1 billion. And we have no more IMF with a backstop and a standby arrangement in place. We have to protect our reserves. And we have said we have adopted a flexible exchange rate trading modality. Now, does that work for us? No. The volatility is causing anxious moments for our business people, and it's showing up in the numbers. How do we address that? How does that get addressed by the central bank, by the private sector, by the Jamaica Bankers Association, by the Cambio operators? How does this get addressed? No, we're building out the mechanisms to reduce volatility, right? That's one by the electronic platform to create more visibility so people can see where currency, the value, the US dollar and Jamaican dollar are trading and other international currencies are trading. Visibility gives you an appreciation for where the market forces are. Right now, if you have a large order, you have to call a bank and the guy says, well, I don't have no money, you know. You know what I mean? But and so there's no transparency, there's no visibility. Right. People don't know what's going on. So people can, you know, so when you have an electronic platform in place, it gives visibility. There's also, in more developed foreign exchange markets with a flexible exchange rate regime, you have to have instruments in place like forward contracts. That means if I want to be able to plan my business 6 months from now, 1 year from now, right? The exchange rate is at 135. I want to be able to know that I can buy dollars at a particular rate, at an exchange rate 6 months time, because I know that is when my Jamaican cash will come in and I want to buy US dollars to restock. And those periods of heightened demand are in January, September, whatever months that you can actually forward purchase US dollars so that you don't have that risk of the thing moving on you and eroding your margins. That is what you call forward contracts, right? That you can buy dollars right now in the future at a price, an agreed price. We need to develop that because this is what needs to complement this flexible exchange rate regime we have and more visibility with the electronic trading platform.
What about the crime impact?
So on the crime side, no, crime of course is a major issue, but our murder rate has been over 1,000 since 1990. 1980. And 1980 went to 800 and then it came down to about 400 by the end of 1989. Then it just went up. Now, we have normalized this as a country, but I think Jamaica is getting to a place and point in time that we are saying enough is enough with crime. And it is, and we normalize it and it becomes like statistics to us. Now, when Kobe Bryant just died in a plane crash, in a helicopter crash, and his problems in Jamaica, everybody put like Kobe, but a teacher in Vauxhall just died. On the school premises. Where are we with that? And that was passed, and we get a little upset for a day or two, and it's gone. Teacher just died. So therefore, we have to get on top of crime, national consensus around crime. Right? We need to stop politicizing crime. Both political parties over different administration must stop politicizing crime. We must put in the oversight mechanism to ensure that Jamaica's interest is being dealt with inside of the crime plan. And if we have a crime plan, the entire Jamaica must get behind it and stop this bantering about whether this is a crime plan or not a crime plan. Yeah. They have a crime plan. We have a very serious commissioner in place who is equipped. We have spent $40 billion over the last 3 years to build out our national security infrastructure, technology, capacity, people, right? To ensure that we can start fighting crime in a real way. We need to wrap our heads around social intervention. When Horace Chang said the thing has not worked, it's because it has not worked, because we still have murder of 1,300 people. So we need to fix those things, and the nation needs to get behind it to break the back of crime.
So Don, I mean, I hear the passion in Keith's voice, right? So I know where the private sector is.
Very attentive.
On this, but those things are things that affect the everyday people. Why is the consumer still not showing a decline in confidence then?
Well, you know, what are the things that are driving consumer confidence? It is the fact that they're seeing jobs taking place around them, primarily in the construction sector, which you may argue is short-term. Short-term, repeated short-term becomes longer-term. So consumers are seeing their family members, their uncle, their father, their mother, because women are getting jobs in the construction sector more and more these days. And they're saying, jobs are available. I may not be getting one, but I see my brother going out to work tomorrow morning and stuff like that, you know? And therefore, they are taking a lot of comfort out of the fact that they're believing that things are becoming more available to them. Now, we have to contextualize that, because the lowest index on the entire radar of consumer confidence is job expectation. People are saying jobs are still very scarce.
But it was at a record high though.
It was at a record high, but we don't want to get carried away with that and think
even that low,
it is a low. If you're coming from 10 up to 20, it's a 100% increase, you know? So we need to factor for that, because people are saying they see what's happening around them. They talk in terms of the construction sector, they talk in terms of the tourism sector, they talk in terms of the BPO. So it is probably not founded on something really seriously analytical, but consumers don't operate from that perspective. Consumers tend to operate, boy, things are happening around me, I'm going to get a job soon. Yeah. The expectation.
But 7.2% as a number is real.
Yeah. Unemployment?
Unemployment. That's real.
I heard a discussion.
It's the same measure them used to measure it for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, but
and it's 7.2% as opposed to 13% 5 years ago.
There's no question unemployment is down.
20%, whatever. At the end of 1980, our unemployment rate was about 27, 28%. To be at 7.2% now is a movement in the right direction. The quality of the jobs are different matter. That's a different matter, but it's the same index that's been used. Where we should really put a focus around is those that are not offering themselves to the workforce. Our working age population is about 2 million. 1.3 million people have offered themselves to the workforce. 700,000 people have not offered themselves, whether they be old, so from the age of 14 upwards are not in the working, workforce.
That's a problem.
Yeah, but
so they have not for themselves.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. So a whole bunch of unattached youth are in that number who have not offered themselves they're not looking for jobs. And then you see them on the street corner. These are the young people that need either social intervention because they are creating the crime and the problem. And those are the people that we need to get to.
So Don, I mean, Keith makes some very important points. Did they give an indication about what their expectation or plans are? Because that's normally a part of your survey.
Yes. The question that we normally ask them is, okay, so this is your perception of what's happening in the economy. What do you plan to do? Do you plan to spend anything? Do you plan to go vacation, buy a house, buy a car, what have you? And what is very clear is that consumers are pretty cautious about their next step.
Even more cautious than they were before.
That's the reality, you know.
So that is why you said it could be the precept to a decline.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. But we don't want to be predictive. We don't have a long enough time series of decline for us to talk more definitively about it. But it is worth noting that it plateaued on this occasion. It is the first time in about 2 years, 8 quarters, that consumer confidence has not gone up. And therefore, this is what we said in the second quarter of 2019 with regard to the business confidence. We saw it dip. And we said, let's watch. It dipped again in third quarter, and it dipped even further. So we can now say it's on a trajectory.
Let me ask you a question. But there was a lot of people had high expectations, right, around the economy and the fact that it was settling down, low interest rates, low inflation, and we're moving in the right direction. So therefore, there is an anticipation, and therefore, people that could have been have great expectations of what it's going to deliver. But and then reality, then they have a reality check and say, okay, could that be what's occurring also?
If there was a decline in consumer confidence, I would say that would probably explain it. But it's just plateaued. It was flat, basically between third and fourth quarter, and therefore I think we'd have to be cautious and say, let's see what happens in the first quarter of 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if it remains flat or dips, then we believe that this is the setting in of a process of decline in consumer confidence, which is at an all-time high, which is important to note. And what is important to note also is the fact that whilst we're talking about business and consumer confidence and we're looking at the movement quarter to quarter, these movements are taking place at a much higher confidence level than ever before.
Right.
So that is a very important point to note too. Because what characterized both business and consumer confidence, but more so consumer confidence between 2001 and 2013, was these huge spikes generated by expectations around elections. 2002,
Really?
2007,
Well, I want to ask
2011.
both of you before we close then. Start with you, Don. Same question. What is going to be the impact of the coronavirus situation?
Wow.
Where do you see that affecting us in the next? Because it's
guess-
going to have an impact, eh?
I guess a lot depends on what happens over the next week or two in terms of the spread.
Next week or two.
Yeah, right. That's close to that because
Yeah.
these things happen pretty quickly. If you find that,
Well,
there's
it's about 20 people a day dying.
well, this is the problem, but in a way we feel ourselves insulated because it hasn't arrived here yet or doesn't seem to have, right? So there's this feeling, we take a lot of comfort out of these things. It probably won't reach us. It's like when a storm comes in and we say, no, it's not going to tackle us, man. You're not going to reach us. And something happens to deflect it and we get more confident next time around.
Well, we just came out of a PSOJ council meeting. Dennis, you know those meetings.
Yeah, you were talking about it too.
The MAJ, the Medical Association of Jamaica rep, says, there is no coronavirus in Jamaica, right? Yeah. And but is there a protocol? The question was, if one comes, because it's likely that one could come,
Yeah.
You okay? So if a few cases come, can we manage it? The answer is yes. There are protocols in place. So we don't need to panic if a case shows up in Jamaica. We need to know that our medical profession and our institute and our Ministry of Health and the other institutions have the capacity to manage it. Okay. That's where we need to have comfort. Right.
All right, well, I mean, it's an interesting conversation. We'll go on and on about it. Thanks for joining us, Don and Keith. Keith will be staying with us after the break, and when we return, we'll look at another index. This time it's corruption, more on point after the break. Welcome back to On Point. Jamaica is now perceived more corrupt than it was in the previous year. According to the 2019 Global Corruption Perception Index report, which is gauged by Transparency International, the country has fallen 4 places in the ranking. Here's more on that.
Jamaica now ranks 74th out of 180 countries in the Global Corruption Perception Index, falling 4 places compared to its 2018 ranking. Ranging from 0 to 100, with 100 being the least corrupt, Jamaica received a score of 43, dropping from 44 in 2018. This ranking positions Jamaica as the 4th most corrupt country amongst the 11 CARICOM states. Executive Director of the local corruption watchdog National Integrity Action NIA, Professor Trevor Monroe, has pointed to several reasons for Jamaica's fall. Most prominent on the list of factors is the resignation of former Education Minister Ruel Reid, who was fingered in a corruption scandal involving the Caribbean Maritime University. Issues of corruption coming from the Auditor General's report on Petrojam are also being cited, along with news that Prime Minister Andrew Holness's statutory declaration had not been cleared.
And still with us to discuss the Corruption Perception Index and what it means for Jamaica and doing business is Mr. Keith Duncan, who is the president of the PSOJ, and joining us is Janet Calder, who is executive director at the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, or JAM. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Dennis.
Janet, let me start with you, because I know you have all the information, right? What has the Corruption Perception Index report told us this year in relation to last year?
Wow. Well, I think first thing we need to acknowledge is there's a difference between rank and score. And it's a little tricky for some people because they work inversely. So the fact of the matter is that the lower the number is for ranking is the better Jamaica is doing, and the higher the score. Now we fell by 1 point for score, and we moved 4 points in the opposite direction for rank. Now, what does it mean for Jamaica? We did exceptionally well moving from 2016 to 17 when we set up that Integrity Commissions bill, because it sent a message that Jamaica was taking corruption seriously. Well, after Petrojam, we suffered a little bit of a setback, but this year, I think there have been a number of significant things that have happened that has really impacted on how people are perceiving how serious we are about dealing with what the Prime Minister calls a tier level 1 threat to Jamaica. So what were some of those things that might have impacted how Transparency International saw us? We had 3 legacy reports coming out from the Contractor General coming into the Integrity Commission, of which the Moon Palace purchase of the land was a concern. There was the issue around the declaration of assets of members of Parliament, where we found out that the Prime Minister's own assets were not cleared. We're looking at the CMU, the firing of a minister, the stepping down of senior public officials. When you put all of that together in 1 year, it's hard to believe that Jamaicans would not be thinking that things are not well in terms of governance. The concern, you know, I mean, this might sound very abstract to a lot of people, the scores, but really and truly what this is doing is signaling to businessmen, both foreign and local investors, the kind of way in which, you know, it sends a signal. Let's put it this way, Dennis. For those who don't want good governance, it sends a signal to a certain kind of investor in terms of how they can come to Jamaica and how they will be facilitated. But if we really want investors who are going to come and respect the rule of law here, it sends a signal also in terms of whether or not this is the country they want. So the more you are falling, is the more it is sending a signal to certain kind of investors that there's a certain way Jamaicans do business, which doesn't all go well for us.
So Keith, as a business person, what is your view when you are looking towards investing in a country, even Jamaica or overseas? I know you have overseas investment. How does the perception of corruption affect you?
It does. It has a significant weighting in your decision making, and in knowing that you have to know that there are processes that you follow, legal and otherwise, that the rule of law is firmly followed and entrenched. And so it's significant, you know what I mean? And the fact is, though, is that even that Jamaica, for decades, has corruption, has been a real challenge for us. And I believe Jamaicans are at the point where they are just saying they're fed up and tired of it. It undermines confidence in the institutions. Jamaicans are a lot more savvy around where we are as a country in terms of our economics, in terms of where we are as a country, and that we can't waste taxpayers' resources. They are getting to a point now where they're demanding accountability and transparency. And therefore, when you have the emergence of a JAMP, Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, and you have several institutions and the national dialogue around corruption being ramped up, it is wonderful. Because we're now saying to our leaders, inclusive of private sector, because I take 2 hands to clap. Private sector have to engage government for there to be corruption.
It's not government alone.
No. Right? And we know how we stay because how much people buy license. How much people, when them come in and them come into Jamaica and them supposed to fill out them
and them just look
customs
as a blight.
Right. You understand what I'm saying? We as a nation, we have had corrupt practices. As individuals, that is who we are. We are transitioning as a country. We put in the structures, Integrity Commission, MOCA, Financial Financial Investigation Division. These have to work for us now. Good that the dialogue is out there, good that people want accountability and transparency. We're putting pressure on leadership in this country, public sector and private sector, to make these things, make these institutions work for us, to reduce incidents of corruption, so that people can be confident in the institutions of Jamaica. You understand? Yes. And respect the rule of law, because if not, if you don't, if we think there is corruption and that is endemic, then it's going to be a free-for-all for everybody. Right. So Jamaica has to mature and grow, and I think we're on the right path. But we need to keep that dialogue going, and JAMP needs to keep speaking and putting it out there, and our leaders need to keep doing it. You know what I mean? I
just want to add to what Keith has said, because you know, people see me all the time and say to me, boy, you're partnering with PSOJ and them are part of the problem, which amazes me. Because one of the points that really need to be made is one of the first victims of corruption is the private sector. So you have a public tender and you work very hard to put a proposal together, but the tender documents have been skewed towards another particular person. The company who should have won the bid is the first company, is the first victim of that act of corruption. So what I'm really saying is that in as much as the private sector is involved in it, the private sector is the first person that blood draw. When the Prime Minister says, guys, it's $64 billion we lose annually in corruption every year. If we just think about what that would do for public goods and services in Jamaica.
But I want to put it to you is not just the businesses in the private sector, because people don't understand is that when someone has an illegal dump, for example, and you pay them to dump your garbage there, isn't that a sort of corruption too? Well,
corruption by definition, corruption by definition really means that somebody that has been entrusted with public assets or authority utilizes it for their gain, private gain. So if there is no gain there, what you have is just somebody who didn't do their job. But I don't know that I would call it.
The gain is that you work on a construction site, you pull in the garbage, and instead of going where you're supposed to do it, costs you a little more.
Yes. Well.
You know, or you put up a private structure and you pay someone in case they see.
Now, if you do that, then you're talking about
private
an act of corruption.
Too.
Yes.
So it's not just business.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You know, so it's an endemic thing. But Keith had mentioned some before I asked Keith. Keith made a very important point that we're building our institutions. I want to throw it to you. Is it that we are no more corrupt than we were 30 years ago, but because we have the institutions now, things are coming to light that were always latent?
That's a very good question. I've never had that one put to me before, Keith. But the world is changing. The words like governance. I was just saying the other day that the Prime Minister has really made the word accountability part of our lexicon. We used to say we want justice. Now everybody's saying we want accountability. So I really think that there's a mindset and a shift worldwide about how we govern ourselves. I think the expectations are also changing. For example, things like EPOC and ESET, where it has become a part of the governance cycle for citizens to get actively involved. 25, 50 years ago, that wasn't the case, so the world is changing. Dennis, the question about were we more corrupt, that's a tough one. I really am not in a position to say, but you give me something to think about for the next time I'm here to answer that one. I don't know.
But I'm not sure. I was exposed to politics as a young man.
I don't know.
Yes.
Right, and I know of the contract system. Everybody have to get a contract.
So it was always there.
It was always
awareness.
there. You know what I mean? When you do some work for your political organization, you have to get a contract, man.
It was always there.
You understand what I'm saying? Because I work hard. So I need to get a contract. That is corruption.
So you answer the question, okay. Is it that it was always there? It's just that, and we're actually, we could say we're improving now because we're actually bringing the things to light now.
Right.
It feels.
You understand what I'm saying?
That's possible.
Rather than covering it up.
So the institutions are in place. Their contractor general would have come on board like 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And that would have raised the bar somewhat.
That's true too.
And then you have the Integrity Commission coming, and then you have MOCA coming, and they've separated MOCA from the constabulary force.
And a growing civil
You know what I mean? So
society.
therefore, the institutional framework is being built out,
True.
and it will bring more cases to light.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? So we're getting there.
Yeah.
Can we get there faster? Yes. And therefore, when we have transparency, like the Jamaica Accountability Meter portal provides,
Yes.
why should we have Auditor General reports outstanding for so many years? If we did that internally as a publicly listed company, then we would have a problem. We would have a real problem. You know what I mean? They would qualify our accounts.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I want to ask you, Keith, I was thinking about this question too. As a publicly listed company or a private company, right? How do you address the issue of preventing any corrupt practices in your organization?
Well, that is just straight governance, and putting in the right framework in place, governance framework. You have your audit committee,
right?
And you have and then you have your internal auditor, and they do their reports and you have a schedule of activities that they are to conduct across the organization. They report into an audit committee. They name their high risk points, their medium risk points, and their low risk points. We have to address them. We have a policy around their address, and they must be addressed within 6 months. High risk points must be dealt within 6 months. Medium risk within 9 months, and low risk, you have to have a plan to address low risk.
So it's straight corporate governance.
Straight corporate governance.
The JC or the FSC follows up.
Yes, they do follow. Yeah.
So the question then, Janet, is why is it that the private sector can get it right that way and has the regulatory agencies following up, but the public bodies, when the Auditor General report comes up, Parliament does nothing about it?
There are a couple of gaps in the accountability mechanism. As Keith was saying, Jamaica has a very strong legislative, institutional, and policy framework. We're really falling down in terms of just simply doing what that has been put in place to help us to do. What do I mean by that? So for example, we were talking that the Auditor General comes out with the reports, it's labeled in the Parliament, the Public Accounts Committee sits. There's a gap in the mechanism because after sitting and talking, making recommendation, there is no mechanism in government to track to see what we have discussed here, what happens in 3 months, in 6 months, in 9 months, and in 12, which is the reason JAMP exists, because citizens are now partnering with government to track it through to the end to make sure that it is remedied. Point I really want to piggyback on is that a lot of us see the Auditor General as a watchdog to say, hey, scandal, corruption, that's what you're doing wrong. But just like Keith says, the private sector will invite audit firms to come in, and they're not necessarily looking for corruption. They're looking to tighten up operational efficiencies. That's part of what our Auditor General does. So it's not just about, fraud and malfeasance, but this is a better way, government, to do this. Now, I heard a PSC member say once, if this was my business, I could never run it like that. And I never forgot. Because I think part of the problem in government is that natural incentive that exists in the private sector is not there. So you have to put these governance structures in place to incentivize them. But if you don't have accountability in government, then you end up without any incentive. So we have all these laws.
But I put it to you that a part of the incentive in the private sector is not just profit.
Yes,
but prison. But it's not in the,
well,
not in the public.
So I was about to say to you,
sector.
you would be surprised that in 2015 we passed a public procurement bill. We decided we would move out of just policy and get to legislation. The legislation speaks about $1 million fine, $3 million fine, 3 years in prison for what? Simple things like failing to publicly tender and just arranging a contract with a man. Yet the last 3 Auditor General's reports on RADA, Ministry of Education, and now CMU shows what? Flagrant disregard for public procurement.
But there's no enforcement. Yeah.
If we begin to get that, then modification of behavior would start taking place overnight.
So the key to this is enforcement then.
And accountability.
And therefore, Keith, as a PSOJ head, what is your stance on it? What are you saying as PSOJ?
From a PSOJ perspective, we'd like to see this framework that we have put in place. We'd like to see the accountability, the processes work. We would want to be able to see that we move from an environment of a low consequence. I've heard the police commissioner call the environment that we operate in Jamaica as low consequence. That's why you have crime. That's why you have corruption, because there are no consequences. There's a low consequence. There has to be proper. You have to bring these cases to the courts, or wherever they should go. Jeanette Campbell said where they should go, people should be fined, people should go to jail for corruption, and that's the only way that people are going to be disincentivized not to practice in corruption. You understand what I'm saying?
And we need to start seeing it as a good thing.
Yeah.
We see accountability as punitive and punishment, but the truth of it is accountability is love. What matters to you is what you hold to account. Exactly.
Well, Dennis, we had to reposition it in the private sector, in some companies, you know, to say, when your auditor does a report on you, it's an opportunity to fix.
Opportunity.
What they're showing is that where you have gaps, and where your processes are weak, that's what they're identifying, and they're mapping it against what you say are your processes.
Yes.
You know what I mean, and the practice.
And giving you the opportunity.
And giving you the opportunity to fix, and then that it really adds value.
It's an interesting discussion, but we'll have to leave it there. We'll have to continue it another time.
Okay.
Keith Duncan, PSOJ President, and Janet Calder, who is doing a very important job in terms of leading the push against corruption with JAM. Thank you for joining us here on Point. When we come back, we'll have the numbers and the word on the street. Welcome back to On Point. 180 countries were scored and ranked in the Corruption Perception Index. Here's a look at the numbers.
More than 2/3 of the 180 countries scored less than 50 out of a possible 100 on the index. The average score registered was 43. The top 5 countries scored between 85 and 87, while on the other end of the spectrum, the countries perceived to be most corrupt scored between 9 and 16. The United States of America received a score of 69, ranking them 23rd in the world. The United Kingdom, which ranked 12th, had a score of 77, while China scored 41 out of 100, ranking 80th.
And our On Point team hit the streets and asked our Jamaicans, what should the Jamaican government do to address the issue of corruption in Jamaica?
Everybody is corrupted. Police, politician. If them just take the time out for look into the system actually and read between the lines, then you can sort out the country better.
May I tell you the truth? Some old people want born over again. You understand? When you understand nothing about the system, they want to get some younger people and carry them and put them, make them be the government. The rest of them can take out all of them there and part them one side. Cause with them in the corruption now go stop. Cause so them carry one, the next one learn after one. The bigger one I go teach the smaller one. You understand?
Well, I think the government should just try them best to be as honest as much. I don't know any other way to explain it, but that's the easiest way to avoid corruption, just be honest.
The government, they can do much more better work. You know, from a man guilty of his crime, he could simply go behind bars, serve the year, do his time. Not though coming back with the hanging thing, but discipline them, put them behind the bars in prison and so on. And any police that has been corrupted, fire them from them work and prison them too.
Get rid of those in the corruption. In any way they can get rid of them. I just say go. Any way they can get rid of them, get rid of them.
Government will get rid of themselves because everybody are thief. You know, so when they bring up one man, they may cut down quick. Nobody never get locked up yet for crime in our country yet. You know, my MP, you know, start one day, so how little man them change. Little man them now go change. So then we have to get rid of first and know, so we get a different set of government we are sure about.
I think the main thing which would help with corruption, I believe, is transparency. You know, everyone can see what everything is being used for. That way you have accountability.
Well, viewers, we had two very interesting and lively discussions today. The first one addressed the whole matter of the business and consumer confidence survey, the latest one done by the JCC, which for me shows a troubling sign, I think, for the economy, something that we expected. We expected that the global economy and certainly Jamaican economy would somewhat decline going into the end of the year, and the business and consumer confidence numbers, I think, are showing it. The businesses are seeming less and less confidence about the prospects going forward, and the consumer confidence is sort of plateauing, which could mean, given the other indicators and other questions, that it might fall. So we have to watch it, and we have to watch it within the context of certain global happenings also, which not least among them is the coronavirus situation, which is going to be very troubling for us going forward, especially if we were to get a case here. The second discussion dealt with another hot button topic, which is preventing growth in Jamaica, and has been preventing growth in Jamaica for a very long time, and that is the matter of corruption and the perception of corruption. In the past year or so, we've had quite a few things to contend with. The major ones being Petrojam, and now the CMU thing just seems like it will never go away. Every day we're hearing something new. So it's something we need to address. We need some accountability, not just at the level of the public body. We definitely need good boards in place, which I think is the front runner to good corporate governance, but also at the ministerial level. The permanent secretaries, they are the ones who are responsible for public bodies, and I think that we need to start having some accountability there if we're going to address the matter of corruption, and Parliament needs to act on it. Well, that's our show for this week, another interesting week. Thanks to our production team and of course our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us for another episode of On Point. I'm Dennis Chung. See you next week.
On Point was brought to you by Dargin Global.